folks, I'm Esther.
I'm Nick.
And we're Fauchematic Off-Grid.
Yep.
Today we're going to tell you the 3 worst decisions that we've made as homesteaders in 3.5 years of homesteading off-grid here in the woods of Idaho. We've also done a 3 best decisions video, but I'll bet you all clicked on this one first. I probably would. So yes, we're going to confess. We're going to bear it all. We're doing this for the beginning of 2017, before people get out of the mood of planning and thinking about decision making. We just want to be helpful to anyone who might be looking at homesteading themselves, so we can keep you from making the mistakes that we have made. And for anyone who doesn't know us, the quick stats. We live off the grid in terms of not connected to the power grid. We have 3 acres. We're in Idaho. We've been out here for 3.5 years and we have 3 children. That's a lot of 3s.
Yeah.
Everything is 3. The answer to every question is 3.
Right. So we're going to share with you 3 of our worst decisions.
Here we go. Number 1. Number 1.
I guess anytime that we've had a fairy tale sort of timeline for the completion of a project, one that comes to mind is the completion of our house, which before moving out here, we had it written down that it was going to take us 1 year from the time that we set down that yurt to the time that we were moving in to a house made out of trees from the property.
Needless to say, we hadn't really thought this through.
No, we didn't. Well, we thought it through, but with 0 experience doing it. So my advice would be to go ahead and give yourself a bunch of time to just get there and see how you like it, and learn a little bit about the environment before you jump into something like that. I'm really glad that we didn't pull the trigger on starting that in that first year that we were here. We got here, got immediately overwhelmed, and wisely, I think, backed off of that schedule. There have been other times that we've put something on the list or on the calendar, and it just didn't happen because we weren't looking at it realistically, and I guess that happens.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we didn't hurt ourselves by having a longer timeline. There was no pain caused by going a few more years without the house because we had a good temporary living situation. The pain there was wasted time, wasted energy, and having to deal with changing tracks. I wasted a lot of energy gardening our first summer, which would have been much better spent just hanging out and trying to learn the characteristics of our property and of our climate. Because although we're both from Idaho, we had crossed the country to this property and also had not had any time to explore the ins and outs of just this particular chunk of land. The way that the sun works, the way that the water is, the way that the wind is. We just hadn't had any time to explore all of that. So for me to just try and put plants in the ground turned out to be a lot of wasted effort. So that's the pain point as opposed to the slower timeline.
Overly ambitious, uninformed planning.
Number 2, worst decision. Drum roll, please. Doing big tasks and also just doing life without community. Yeah.
So we moved up here essentially on our own. We didn't know anybody in the immediate area. We had family down in town, but all of these things that we had ambitiously put on the calendar, it was really just up to us to pull them off. which isn't so bad. I mean, not everybody has friends and neighbors that come and weed their garden for them, but we just didn't have that additional resource to learn from. People who had been through it before, people who had lived in the area before, we were a little cut off from that as a resource.
And to be clear, we definitely have had good experiences with community as well. And we have a lot of community right now. And that's one of the reasons that we're succeeding right now. As we're looking back at 3.5 years, we can almost pick the successful projects by whether or not there were any other humans involved. And this is probably a particular Achilles heel or weak point for me and Nick, because we're both pretty introverted people and don't necessarily reach out to other people as that kind of the first resource. But there's no more important resource than humans when homesteading, and particularly local people who have knowledge and the ability to share in work and skills. We just barely got our rocket mass heater to the point where it was working, you know, this choice that we're so proud of, the rocket mass heater, because we made the choice to do the cob mostly by ourselves. We had one friend, Thomas, come up. Thanks, Thomas. But we didn't try to put together a cob work party. I bet we'd be sitting on a finished bench right now if we had. So there's a bit of humility to that, and also just having the skill to invest in those relationships, because of course if you want people to help you, then you also have to help them. And it makes things slower. Going back to that idea of timeline, it slows you down a little bit, but we definitely have had the success of our frame raising with people who were here. And I do think that the people who came for that really got something out of it in almost all cases. And plus there was pizza. It wasn't like it was a horrible day. That was a really successful moment for a lot of us, not just us, but for the people who visited to do that. And I think that the extra energy of planning and the extra energy of creating and maintaining those relationships is just completely worth it.
Absolutely. And so when we say the bad decision was to do this without community, that lasted for like a year. But that first year was really difficult because we were just figuring it out. But I guess it just takes time to develop that sort of thing.
Great. So number three, the third worst decision. Dun, dun, dun.
Our third worst decision, and this one is kind of general again, but any time that we have made a quick fix to a long-term problem. A couple of things come to mind. One is my first attempts at plumbing down at the yurt. We had been here for a little while, I don't know, a couple of months before we really started to investigate the using our own spring water. We ended up running a gravity feed line down to the yurt, and rather than go and look up how a lot of residential plumbing is done, I just started grabbing parts and started putting things together, and I just started really simply, and things generally worked okay, but when winter came, they really didn't work, and we didn't really protect ourselves from things not working. So by not taking the time to do the research or to do it correctly, I've spent a good chunk of time every year down at the yurt, kind of redoing stuff or fixing things, or there was a lot of time where I was chasing down a problem when there's a naked kid in the shower or something. I've certainly learned a lot since then, but it was just one of those times where I should have really buckled down and done it right the first time.
it's certainly there are times when you have to just get something there in order to survive. And that to some extent with our water, that's exactly what needed to happen. So I'm not sure that I'm saying that it would have been better to live that moment of our lives differently, but it certainly was a very inefficient point in our whole process.
Absolutely. And I think that we found kind of any time that we do a just get it to work sort of solution, we're less happy with the results and less happy with kind of where our time has gone.
And I'd add to that a just get it to work solution with modern man-made elements is the worst. I don't know. I mean, just get it to work like dig a hole, or just get it to work move this snow. Those aren't the kinds of things that are problematic.
Right, but just get it to work with 5 trips to the hardware store is terrible.
That's the worst. So, as we've said before, do all the good things that we have done and not the bad things. So don't do 5 trips to the hardware store for something you haven't really designed in the first place.
Right.
Don't
or
do
that
it.
you're going to have to fix immediately.
And repeatedly over 3 years. Right. So thanks for watching today. This has been our 3 worst decisions that we've made in our homestead for 3.5 years. We'd be interested to hear your good and bad decisions as well. Feel free to share them in the comments below. And thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks for watching.